An Affliction of the Heart by Anonymous Pegasus. Chapter 11. First Kiss. Kuno hummed thoughtfully as she licked the cake batter off her hoof, testing the taste. It was a chocolate cake she was making, determined to get another since her birthday cake was so good. Warren had told her the recipe and given her all the tools and set her on her way as he went to town, with the warning of don't burn the house down. Kuno was confident that she wouldn't burn the entire house down. Hopefully. She could bake bread at least, but a cake was an entirely different thing. The front door opened, and Kuno paused, quickly shrinking back against the cupboard. Hoofbeats came down the hallway, and a tired voice called out, "It's me." Kuno relaxed, returning to stirring the mixture vigorously with a wooden spoon. Warren dumped his carry pack on the counter and then raised a brow at the changeling. "You're still stirring it? I left an hour ago." Kuno bristled at that.
"I gotta make sure there's no lumps, so I stirred a lot, and then the sides of it got all dry and started to harden, so I had to eat them. And while those lumps were being eaten, more formed, and I had to eat those too."
"Oh, right. You had to eat them," Warren said with a slow shake of his head, holding out a hoof for the bowl. The changeling huffed, passing over the bowl to the Pegasus, who immediately poured the mixture into a baking dish and then slid it into the oven. Warren then passed the bowl back to the changeling, leaning over and neatly inserting the spoon into one of the holes in Kuno's hoofs. "You may lick the spoon and bowl." Kuno's eyes widened, and then she gleed, drawing her hoof up to her face and beginning to happily lick the spoon clean.
"So why'd you have to go back to town anyhow? You went just yesterday."
Kuno pointed out as she lapped the spoon happily. "I only really got the cake and collar yesterday, to be honest," Warren said with a helpless shrug. "I'm not the best flyer ever, and even though guard training helped a little bit, I still can't fly very well carrying huge loads." Kuno gave a sound of understanding as she dumped the spoon into the sink and then started on the bowl. "So, why do changelings have holes in their hooves anyway?" Warren asked, as he began to unpack the food he had brought with him from inside the backpack. Kuno hummed faintly, licking across the bottom of the bowl happily.
"Well,"
she started, her tone muffled from the bowl over her face.
"our chitin is really heavy, and I mean really, really heavy. It's thin and flexible where we need to move, but rigid and thicker where we don't need mobility, like along our hooves. With all these holes in our hooves, we reduce the weight of our chitin. I guess our wings aren't built to handle such heavy loads, and I guess if we didn't have these holes to reduce the weight, we'd never be able to fly anywhere."
There was a silence from Warren, and Kuno flicked her wings for a moment before coming up from the bowl and peering up at him.
"What?"
The Pegasus was just watching her, with an arched brow. Kuno's face was smattered with chocolate, a line of it across her cheeks, nose, chin, and even a little bit on the end of her horn.
"What?"
Kuno asked, huffing once. "Nothing," Warren said with a slow shake of his head and a snicker.
"It doesn't seem like nothing,"
Kuno accused. "Just, you're cute," Warren admitted with a wry smile.
"Well, thanks."
Kuno said happily, shoving her face back into the bowl to get more of the cake batter. Warren just shook his head, giving a short chuckle. After a few minutes, Kuno pulled back out with a soft sigh, giving a single lick along the edge of the bowl. Her face was a mess, but she was a very content-looking changeling. "All done?" Warren asked, raising a brow at the changeling. Kuno nodded, dropping the bowl into the sink, and then picking up a spoon to peer at her distorted reflection.
"Ooh, I'm a mess."
Warren chuckled, picking up a tea towel and moistening it in the sink, turning towards the changeling. Kuno shirked back and shook her head.
"No, no, no, no. No washcloth. I don't like how it feels."
Kuno said with a shudder, before a sly grin stretched her muzzle.
"You're gonna have to lick me clean."
"You want me to lick you?" Warren asked blankly.
"That is something that is involved in licking me clean."
Kuno sing-songed with a mischievous smile. Warren sighed faintly and then rolled his eyes. "Why do I feel like this is an elaborate plan for something?"
"What could I possibly gain from you licking my face clean?"
Kuno asked, an ear perking. I don't know," Warren said, pursing his lips. But this is an odd request.
Warden?
Kuno started. Yes? Warden responded.
Shut up and start licking.
Warden gave a helpless chuckle at that, shaking his head and then shuffling closer to the changeling. He extended his hooves, gently grasping her shoulders, and then leaning in close until his nose was almost against her cheek, before drawing his tongue in a firm line across a trail of cake batter. The cake batter tasted of chocolate, with that kind of powdery aftertaste of flour in it. The chitin underneath it was smoother and became silk with his tongue. It wasn't moisture-proof and absorbed some of his saliva and the chocolate flavor, but it was still a very hard surface. Kuno gave a happy sigh, tilting her head slightly towards the licking, careful not to gore him with her horn. Her wings lifted as she gave a happy hum, the translucent limbs giving a happy little quiver. Warren observed this behavior with a detached interest, lapping at the changeling's cheek, and then her chin, skipping over her nose and then trailing his tongue between her eyes. Her horn almost poked him, and he tilted his head, lipping along the length of the shiny black spire until he could swirl his tongue to get the cake mix off the very tip of it. Kuno giggled faintly, twitching in places.
Tickles,
she murmured, with her eyes still closed. The Pegasus smiled, looking down at her, kissing the tip of her horn, before swirling his tongue back down across her face and to her nose, delicately lapping it clean slowly. She really was cute. Surprisingly so. There. All clean, Warren said softly.
all clean.
Kuno responded with a gentle nod, giving a bit of a sigh. A silence stretched out between them, while Warren nervously picked at a spot on the floor with a forehoof. Kuno honestly thought that the Pegasus was going to pass up the opportunity before Warren stepped forward and lifted her chin with a hoof, laying an almost urgent kiss on her lips, fervently kissing the changeling. The changeling gave up a hum of satisfaction, that her wings fluttering again in happy excitement as she kissed the Pegasus in response, parting her lips and sliding her tongue out between those two big teeth, immediately greeted by the Pegasus' own. Warren leaned in a bit further into the kiss, kissing the changeling in earnest, a hoof lifting to wrap around her neck and hug her close, their tongues meshing heatedly as his wings sprung up as well, fluttering and quivering excitedly in the air. Both of them had the faint taste of cake batter in their mouths from their previous activities, and it added an enjoyable overtone to the make-out session. After several long, long moments of impassioned kissing, the two pulled back from each other. Kuno was wearing a lopsided grin while Warren was flushing faintly, still nervous. That was nice, Warren admitted, brushing a hoof against the floor.
I concur.
Kuno purred in response, licking her lips and the inside of her two large teeth.
And I got free extra cake batter and free extra love. Feels kind of selfish, really.
Warren gave a wry smile at that, still nervous.
And you took the initiative.
Kuno pointed out with a grin and a bounce.
I was afraid I was going to have to hold you down and force you.
Afraid or fantasizing? Warren asked, arcing a brow. Kuno grinned, waggling a hoof at the Pegasus playfully, and kissing his nose once.
You're learning.